This video is going to cover tone and mood in literature. So let's start with, what are tone and mood? They can very easily be confused, so let's make sure we understand what each of them are. Tone. Tone is the author's attitude, and it's going to be about his or her subject, a type of character in the story, or you, the reader. Mood is how the story makes you as the reader feel. So if you can remember, tone is always about the author and mood is always about you as the reader. So when we talk about tone, tones can be described very simply as positive, negative, or neutral. So when you're trying to determine the tone of a passage, read the passage, figure out what topic or type of character you think the tone might be about. Read the passage and decide if what you're reading is being told in a positive, negative, or neutral way. Tone definitely can influence a story's mood or atmosphere, okay, which is how it makes you feel. And that's why sometimes these two concepts are confusing. But remember, tone is always about the author and mood is always about you, the reader. So, what are some examples of tones that you can find in literature? Well, authors can be very cynical. They can be sympathetic. They can be approving of something. They can be disapproving of something. They can take on a very sarcastic tone, or they could just be that neutral, objective tone. So how do you find a tone? Okay. Well, the first thing you do is you look at the author's diction. That's just a fancy way to say word choice. That's the most important thing that you can look at. And really, that's all you look at. When authors develop characters, guess what they use to develop them? Words. When they develop the conflict and they resolve the conflict, guess how they do that? With words. When authors develop the setting, guess what they use? Words. So you need to look at the author's word choice or diction and how they use those words to develop characters or to develop the conflict and resolve it. And what you need to realize is that the tone is not going to be directly stated in the story. You're going to need to read between the lines to see what that author's attitude is on the subject or type of character. So you're going to need to look at their words and once again determine, are they positive? Are they negative? Are they neutral? And then from there, think about what that attitude might be. So once you've done that, you're then ready to find mood, because remember, tone definitely impacts the mood of the story. So guess what? You look at the same things to find the mood. You look at how the author uses diction, develops characters, the conflict, the resolution, or the setting, and then you decide how you feel. And everybody brings their own experiences to the table when they read. So you might feel differently than someone else about the story. So you might have a different mood, and that is okay. There's really no wrong answer for mood as long as you can find either the word choice, the character development, the conflict development or resolution, or the setting description that supports that mood. But keep in mind, once again, mood, just like tone, is not directly stated in the story. So you're going to have to think about all of those things that the author is doing as you read to then determine how you feel. So how can you feel reading a story? Well, here's a few. You can be very cheerful. You can be frightened. You can be sad, mad, nervous. It can make you feel peaceful. And the list goes on and on. But those are some of the moods that a story could possibly create for you. So let's practice. All right. So we're gonna start by practicing tone. Okay. So Isaac Asimov wrote the short story, The Fun They Had. So, like, brief recap, you have Margie and Tommy who live in the future. Their teacher is a robot, and Margie's is not working well. So they have to call the county inspector, and she's disappointed because they're not going to take her teacher away because she hates school. Well, in the meantime, we find out that Tommy found a real book made out of paper, and they read it. And that real book is about school from decades ago, from when their great grandparents went, when they went in person, when they got to go with other kids. And Margie, boy, she wishes she could go to school and have the fun that they had. So that's kind of what's going on. So if we look at, remember, we're talking about tone here, the author's word choice in how he develops this idea of school and how he develops Margie and her thoughts and feelings about school, we can start to see what Isaac Asimov's tone is. So I just pulled a couple of quotes so we could start to see how those word choices are used. Margie was scornful. School? What's there to write about school? I hate school. Margie always hated school, but now she hated it more than ever. The mechanical teacher had been giving her test after test in geography, and she had been doing worse and worse until her mother had shaken her head sorrowfully and sent for the county inspector. So I thought about, okay, what words showed the author's attitude or emotion? What were just some emotion or attitude words in those quotes? So I thought scornful, hate, hated it more than ever, worse, sorrowfully. Those were all some pretty emotion-filled words that could key me in on the author's attitude. And all of those are surrounding Margie talking about, or the mother talking about, like that virtual school with the robot teacher. And they're all negative. So I feel like because of the author's word choice, his diction, we can really see that he has a negative attitude towards virtual school. And that is a great example of how you can start to figure out the author's tone. Now, let's talk about how does that apply to mood? Well, during the pandemic, quite a few, if not all students and teachers had to go virtual. So remember I said mood, you bring your own experiences to the table. Well, I'm going to say, as I was reading this story, okay, as I was reading through those same quotes, those same parts of the story where Margie was scornful and she's like, I hate school and now I hate it more than ever and it just kept getting worse. I was totally agreeable because I hated not being able to see my students and interact with them. And it just kept getting worse. And so my mood was agreeable because that's how I felt while I was reading the story. Now, if you notice, it's the same quotes because the same things in a story that create tone also create mood. One of the big differences is tone is all about the author's attitude. So we can look at their word choice and how they develop characters and describe the conflict and resolve it and the words that they use to really see what the author's attitude is. But then those same words and descriptions give us a feeling, and that's also what creates mood. So there you have it. That's tone and mood. So now you need to head to Canvas and you need to complete the tone and mood activity for today. So for the tone portion, I want you to now focus on Asimov's attitude towards in-person school. Find some quotes. Look for those words, those emotion or attitude words. How is he describing in-person school? How is he developing the characters and resolving the conflict? And how does that let us know what his attitude is, what his tone is? And then after you've read those descriptions, you've read through all of his word choices, how does that make you feel? What is the mood that the descriptions of that in-person school environment create for you as the reader? All right, good luck. If you have any questions, feel free to email or ask.